Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. We've got a joint meeting today with the North Shore Board and also with North Shore Water District. So you'll see North City, excuse me. Water District. So you'll see and hear some different voices and faces today. So if you want to do the roll call.
Yes, good evening. First, I'll do the roll call for North Shore Fire District and then North City Water District. Commissioner Adman.
Present.
Commissioner Pratt is on a call, but will be joining shortly. Commissioner Byers.
Present.
Commissioner Webster, I believe, is absent. Commissioner Willem.
Present.
Chief Cowan.
Here.
Legal Counsel Matt Paxton.
Here.
And Board Secretary Amy Oakley. For North City Water District, Commissioner Hale.
Here.
Commissioner Ricker.
Here.
And Commissioner Haynes.
Here.
Thank you.
And now is our time for public comment, if we have any.
All right.
Why don't you come up here and face this way, and that way they'll be able to see you.
Let's see.
All right.
And then the camera's right up there.
Okay, can online, can you hear me? Yes, you can hear me. All right, I'm Ken Dean, and I'm really here today just to introduce myself. I'm part of I'm a member of a group of people in South Kenmore who are really hoping to keep the facility there, the fire station that's on Northeast 153rd in public ownership, in the ownership of the fire department. And my wife and I have been residents there for not quite 40 years. And the group of us, well, first of all, I'm hoping all the commissioners and Chief Cowan, I hope you got copies of the proposals that we sent, and I'll just go through just briefly. We are concerned about the fact that there are no fire department facilities south of the Sammamish River. And there's only one bridge across the Sammamish River in the city of Kenmore, and there's some smaller bridges that are in Bothell, and then there's 405, but it's hard to, it may be hard to get fire equipment into the South Kenmore area in the event of a earthquake or a forest fire or something major. And city of Kirkland has fire equipment, but they may be busy if there's really a disaster going on. So we think that the land there is a good location. It's centrally located in South Kenmore. It's on an arterial. Maybe best of all, you already own it, so you don't have to go buy it. And maybe even better than that is that you've got a committed group of neighbors who really want to see it stay there and are willing to pitch in to help, to do whatever it takes to help keep it be there. And if the department decides that maybe they do someday want to use it, but don't want to use it anytime soon, it may help to know that there's a very enthusiastic group of neighbors who want to make it a garden, community garden. And there's only one other community garden in all of Kenmore. Yeah, it's in Kenmore. And they've got a waiting list. And so that would mean instead of having to maintain it, the Community Garden Association could maintain it. You'd get lease income. And then when you needed to use it, you could use it. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that the land right now is being used every morning by groups of teenagers to wait for the bus. And we're really hoping that whatever happens, if it gets sold off or it gets held for development, that some land can be set aside to keep the kids safe, because they're big groups of kids and they need to be off the street. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your work keeping us all safe.
Thank you for your comments.
And welcome to come to the North City.
Amy, were there any others that wanted to make a public comment? Okay. So Chief Brown, did you want to make any comments regarding that?
I think that he understands where we're going, but just in case,
Perfect.
if not, we will be starting a process, hopefully this month, to evaluate exactly what you just mentioned of, are we ever going to need it, at a fire station, even if it's an aid car or something of that nature, because you're absolutely right. Owning the property is much better than trying to find property in the future and so forth. So we have a computer model that we're gonna try and forecast out the next 30, 40 years and see if there's ever going to be a need, for enough of a justification to staff it. And if that's the case, then it'll be a board decision, but we'll likely hold on to it and, and try and pursue other things. If it doesn't look like it's ever going to be needed as a functioning fire station, again, the board I'll be presenting all the information to the board, and and then we'll decide on what we're going to do with it at that point. But I do appreciate your sending me some of the ideas that you all have, and we are definitely sensitive to trying to make sure that we're meeting community needs as well. I hope that by April-ish that we should have the data. It takes some time to put all this stuff into the software and get benchmark data at least.
And it takes a few months to also get the forecasts worked out, because you've got to go back and say, okay, do they really want to make multifamily in some of these? Do they not want to?
Well, that's definitely part of this, is to look at current and potential changes in land usage.
So that part does take a little bit of time, correct?
Yeah, we have to research. So thank you.
Okay, so if we
I think they're trying to
can
figure
get,
out whether or not they can plant the garden this year.
so if we can get approval of the agenda.
I have a question on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
I just want to confirm how we want to do this, because as I flipped it over, I see we have essentially two separate agendas that are just we have an additional public comment and an additional agenda. So this would be just strictly the agenda for the joint
Correct.
meetings. Okay, so I move that we approve the agenda for the joint portion of the board meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, so in the joint meeting between North City Water and North Shore, there are several topics of discussion. So the first one is the sound transit discussion, and I'm not sure who we want to lead that. Oh, sorry. Okay. See, I'm slow. I'm telling you, it's only the second one. Okay, so all in favor? Aye. Motion's approved. Okay, now we're on to the sound transit discussion, and I don't know who wants
So I
to.
wanted to just bring you guys aware of that. I'm Diane Pottinger, the district manager. This is Max Woody. He's the director of our engineering operations and engineering at North City Water District. Our base office is located up in Shoreline in the North City area on 177th and 15th, if that kind of gives you an idea. But we also serve over 40% of the city of Lake Forest Park. We're their water provider. So we used to have a pretty good meeting that we try and come down here once a year. Didn't always work that way, but we tried. And so looking forward to continuing to do that. We have been working with Sound Transit for a number of years on the project, on the Linwood Link project as it comes through Shoreline. But that is one that isn't impacting you. There's a second one though, that's going to be starting up here pretty soon in the design phase, starting from I-5, coming over 145th and then going up Bothell Way, clear out to Woodinville. And it's called the State Route 522 project, or the bus rapid transit. And so we have just entered into the contract with Sound Transit on that. We thought that you guys might want to be aware of it because we provide water through, our lines that help fight fires. And so we have the whole area from 160th, Northeast 160th, all the way up to the shopping center. So that's just about a mile. I can't remember, a mile of pipe that where, Sound Transit, go ahead,
Which shopping center?
the Lake Forest Park Shopping Center. Sorry, the existing water mains, which were installed in 1966 in that area. They're 6-inch mains, so they aren't as big as what our normal design standards would be 8 inches in that area. But they function great. They're doing a wonderful job. But it appears that Sound Transit is likely, we haven't finalized designs and stuff, but a lot of their project is to move the drainage that's coming off the new State Route 522 has got to go clear to the side, which our water lines are right there at the side of the road. So likely our water mains will have to move. And for them to put the drainage in, and in that case, then Sound Transit gets to pay for them to go ahead and move them. So we try and keep involved with the fire department and make you aware of that. There's going to be a number of conversations. We also have projects that will be going along from I-5 over clear to the end of our service area, which is north, it's in Shoreline. We don't have that full area. Seattle Public Utilities, which they assumed a water district that serves outside of the city of Seattle, but they have a small corner in Lake Forest Park and in Shoreline that they serve. So Sound Transit will have to enter into an agreement with SPU to go ahead and work on water lines along that area. But we wanted to make you aware of that because, again, it benefits you guys, it benefits your customers, your fire department staff needs to know that, you know, they'll have that kind of water lines available in the event that they have a fire down at Sheridan Beach.
What size main do you think you would, if it's gonna, you know, get taken out, what would you increase to?
We're going to 8-inch is what that area is. I can't see that the city of Lake Forest Park would put multifamily down in the area. Those are pretty expensive homes that they have down there. But those guys require a lot of fire flow. We've had, I'm trying to think of one of the customers that we have that's in Lake Forest Park had a shower that was installed. I remember you commissioners hearing about this, put 27 shower heads
Wow.
in the shower.
I want to take a shower there.
What?
In a house?
In a residential house. She'd always wanted to have a shower like that.
Wow.
So you're talking about lines that would run from 145th along Bob Way down to the Lake Forest Park Town Center. And would those be I don't know what the configuration of the water lines is with NUD continuing east on 522. I guess, would they be, because I could see that area could potentially have some multifamily on the
Correct.
south end of Lake Washington.
So I assume, I have not talked to Al from North Shore Utility District is taking a leave of absence for a short period. Well, I don't know how long of time, but if there's an identified end of the period, but it's likely they will have to have an agreement going through the rest of Lake Forest Park and Kenmore to do the same thing. They have done a major upsizing and they are charging people for it for a project over, you're familiar with Totem Lake area. And they've upsized a lot of that, put some multifamily in it. And North Shore spent about 5 years. I don't know if you're aware that they spent a lot of time putting time and effort to upsize the sewer lines. So all of the future customers are paying a surcharge, you know, or a benefits charge to go ahead and cover the cost. So it's not the rest of North Shore Utility, just the people within that basin, that sewer basin is paying for that. So it's likely that that's what they might do in that area, given the rest of North Shore would not be impacted by one area getting built out. But anyway, we wanted to make you aware of that. We keep our Board of Commissioners aware of it, and we wanted to make you guys aware of it. And if there's things that you can think of or want to be aware of, that to let us know.
Thank you.
Okay, so topic 4.2 is North Shore Fire Department regionalization update discussion.
Right, so just wanted to share with you all where we've come from. In June of this last year. We entered into a contract, Shoreline and the North Shore Fire Department, to provide services. And it went it's been going very well. We've had a lot of little fires, pun intended, I suppose.
We haven't heard about.
You would hear about it, too. We had a bunch of little things to address, but thankfully we were very proactive with the unions and trying to address all of the identified stuff up front. I mean stuff because it was a full gamut of everything from financial to logistics to operational and so forth. And it's been going very well. We're still dealing with a few things, but we're really kind of starting to filter out and find a good new normal for us. It is a contract. It's under an ILA. It's not a full merger. So we get a lot of efficiencies. We won't get all of the efficiencies of a merger, but we do get quite a few of them. That's probably about, well, one of the things that's kind of importance maybe to the citizens as well, is that we were able to, through this process, look at levels of service and improving. We have added a peak hour 8 car out of Lake Forest Park so that we could also facilitate transports to the hospital. And so that's a big improvement for our citizens. That's the big one for us. We have had better flexibility in doing operational staffing and all that. And we continue to work on that. But it's been going fairly well. You have any questions on it?
Do you ever get to rest?
When I die.
Like, I just can't imagine. I mean, I think this is great, this partnership, because the level of fire protection services and aid goes up exponentially by combining the districts.
Yeah.
But one guy overseeing them all. God bless you, sir.
Well, thank you. Interestingly enough, I love challenges. It certainly was a lot of work this last year. It's still an increased workload now, but over time, I expect that once everything kind of normalizes entirely, it won't be as much of a burden. Because for me, my scope of my span of control, my scope of people that I supervise and all that really hasn't changed. The amount of work has changed and some of the things and all of that, but over time, I hope that you get to a good place. And honestly, you kind of already mentioned it, that things like this, regionalization, I am a big proponent. As long as you do it right, transparently, with the right motivation, with the right people, with the right intent and all that, most regionalization is a really good thing because it allows for better efficiencies and stretching taxpayers' dollars further. And improving levels of service and or maintaining levels of service, if not improving levels of service. And those efficiencies, especially on the financial side, can be reinvested long-term into those levels of service. Even if you don't have improvements immediately, long-term, you can see those improvements. So it's worth it for me. I mean, I'm here to serve you all. We're here to serve the public. And so if we can do it in a better way, then I'm always for it. Thank you.
So you did, Chief Cowan, you did bring up taxpayer dollars. We don't have the ability to go ahead and tax our ratepayers. We only charge the revenue is from what we get for water, buying water, and then also we get rent for our towers, our cell towers. But that's it. Those are our only abilities. And connection charges, we have the developers pay what their fair share costs.
Thank you.
Okay, then our next topic is North Shore Fire Department staffing update discussion.
That's on me too. Many departments, if not all the fire departments, have been struggling with maintaining staffing levels. There's been quite a bit of attrition, and trying to replace those positions has been a struggle. Whether it's the candidates coming through and or the amount of fire academies and so forth. One of the things that was kind of a benefit of doing this regionalization was to identify what our staffing levels should be. I'm going to talk about the suppression side for a second. And so for us, I have a computer model that we try to look at sick leave and vacation usage and so forth, and trying to figure out where our staffing levels should be to maintain our minimum staffing levels without, a significant amount of overtime. Overtime will always be part of our, budgeting process, because if you're to overstaff enough to try and eliminate overtime, which you never will, it's very cost prohibitive. So there is a sweet spot, a compromise in there somewhere. And the good news is that that theoretical model was 112 suppression assigned to suppression, and with the 11 that we just had coming out of the academy, we hit that mark about. And depending on people being on disability or extended leaves and so forth. So now it's going to be nice to see really if that, because that's all off of an Excel spreadsheet, the theoretical model, to see really what the reality is and what the real life experience is, and to see if this is our right target. It's really nice to hit that, though. I know that other departments are still struggling to get back to that full staffing model. So the 11 that we had just come out of the academy gets us there. We have another 6 in the current academy, which will help us with the attrition that we're planning on for the rest of this year. We have a incentive program for staff to let us know early on, so that if they're intending to retire. In this case, the date is actually February 1st for the following year. So we just found out about the intents for 2024, but last year we had a notification of the intents for this year. And so the 6 that we have going through the current academy, hopefully we'll take care of most of the attrition. If we're still short, we may look at, I don't want to run another fall academy. So hopefully if we are still short of where we want to be, we'll probably look at lateral firefighter hires instead of doing a fall academy. And then next January, we'll do an academy for the following. So, I think we're at a place now where we can just hopefully maintain, through the attrition that's coming up, what we need to hire, for. So the other side of the coin, on the ALS side, we are the attrition wave that we had on suppression is stabilizing or waning even. Well, it's really.
We're not familiar with the terms of suppression or.
Oh, okay,
ALS,
sorry.
so you can-
Thank you. I sometimes go on.
It's
things,
okay.
so
We're
thank you.
saying-
So when I say suppression, I'm talking about firefighter EMTs that are on fire engines and 8 cars and the ladder truck and things of that nature. It's what you would normally call firefighters. All of that. That's all of the suppression side of our staffing. We also have ALS staffing, paramedics, and that's I have a completely separate budget that I have to manage, because we get funding from the county through the EMS levy to fund that side of the services that we provide. And so we have to keep them completely separate, because it's a different revenue stream. So, and that's what's required from the county. So the paramedics and MSOs, and there's some other, support staff is funded through that other budget. That's what I call the ALS, advanced life support. So that's what you would say the paramedics are. That's what we're talking about.
So you don't have to do separate financial statements for that part, just separate bookings, or, it's revenue that comes in and you have to show that as a separate line item with your financial statements for the emergency.
That's correct. The revenues for that side of the organization, the county collects all that money, and then I have staff that has to bill the county, and we get reimbursed for the county. We have a little bit of say in some of the discretion, but there's not a lot. It's a program that's established and funded, and they have set amounts for capital replacement and equipment and staffing and so forth from the county. And it's mostly in and out, kind of transfer of funds.
Hey, Chief, can I just give them an overview? So in King County, paramedic services, which the chief refers to as ALS, Advanced Life Support, it's provided by a limited number of regional providers. So each provider operates medic units that serve their own area, but they also serve a surrounding region. So that part of our service is offered as a regional service. So we serve Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, Kenmore. We have 3 medic units one in Shoreline, one in Lake Forest Park, one's in Bothell, and they'll respond into Kirkland, Woodinville, serving the surrounding region.
And thank you, that's a really good point. There's, and that's one of the reasons why it's funded by a county-wide EMS levy, because it is truly a regional service. There are 3 providers in the north end of King County, Shoreline, Redmond, and Bellevue. South County is run by the, South King County is run by the county. And then Seattle has their own, and those are the providers of ALS services, paramedic services throughout the county.
So that's helpful. The reason I was asking the financial questions is we've just finished our regular financial audit that we do every year. But we also had a separate retirement audit, and we heard that the Department of Retirement is looking at doing, we've never had one before, but they're looking at doing one every 5 years with
Yes.
all government agencies going forward, and they had to match down to the penny, all the dollars and pennies that came out of the employees' paychecks, made sure that it went into the state retirement. So they had to look at all our payrolls and match that all up.
Yeah, we're going through the same thing. We're, in fact, I think they're about done, and we're about to get,
So there you
I don't
go.
know where we're at, but we're very close to getting,
Brand new.
finished up with the audit. The audit's been going on for, it seems like 6 months. So anyway, so on our ALS side, on that paramedic side, we are going through quite a bit of attrition. That wave of attrition is hitting us on that side pretty significantly. And so over the next 4 or 5 years, I anticipate that we're going to see a lot of our paramedics in the neighborhood. I think there's over 20 that are at retirement age or will be at retirement age. So over the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to see a significant amount of our ALS personnel turnover and retire out. We have 4 medics that have put in for next year, or ALS personnel that have put in for next year. And we have a couple that are leaving this year as well. So it's, we're, and we have very limited, and the reason why I'm mentioning this too is that while we can run our own fire training academy, the ALS services in King County are arguably some of the best in the world. And part of that is or a big part of that is because of the training program, and there's limited numbers of opportunities to put people into training. So, and it takes over a year, we're in the process here in the next couple of months of identifying who our candidates will be. And then they go into the training program, and we won't see them again until August of next year. So it's over a year-long program with starting with anatomy and physiology at the U. So, we are going to see a wave of our ALS personnel, and we are. The fortunate thing is that we have 8 candidates that have applied, and so we'll see how they do through the process and all that. And then I know that we have at least 6 positions guaranteed, in the program for this year. So we'll see. We're trying for a 7th, but then it'll depend on how many candidates pass the process and so forth too.
Well, we certainly understand training. I don't know if you guys are aware that the most recent training you guys did training up at our reservoir earlier this last year, or in 2022. And so we had pictures of fire departments all over North King County.
Hanging out,
Yeah,
literally.
yeah, literally. They were rappelling down our side of our reservoir, which was really quite fun. And it was good for us to be able to see, different actions and stuff. So correct me if I'm wrong, commissioners, you guys were all out there watching.
Oh, yes, there was.
It was really cool to see the training going on and the seriousness. And not only was the firefighters trained to get certified, but there was also a guy there from the state patrol. It was like, state patrol, what are you doing here? And he goes, when somebody's gonna blow up a bridge, somebody has to get up there.
Yeah.
Get it down, and that would be me.
Yeah.
He was also scaling the water tower.
Any questions on staffing or where we're at? Or what our
No, I
target
have
is?
a question, has nothing to do with staffing, but it's a service that you used to provide. Do you still have the little gizmo that you can hang on your door with the house key?
Yes, we're trying to get away from super boxes, which is kind of a name of,
So
it's just a little key or number or,
Yeah. and
there's different styles.
Yeah.
And you can still get those. But what we recommend, because it's more secure, is Knox boxes. And you'll see those on, sorry. You'll see those on commercial buildings, much, you still see them on residential buildings too, but mostly on commercial. It's a black box about this big. And it sticks out and all that. It's more secure, so those are what we recommend.
Yeah, what I have is
Sorry.
blue thing
Throat.
that hangs over the door.
That hangs over the door.
It hangs over the top of the
Over,
door.
well,
Oh, on a door hanger thing?
yeah,
I am not, I don't know, is Eric familiar or? Sorry, this is my throat. I'm not familiar. I have water. it's
Just
not
in
helping.
case.
It's not helping. I'm not familiar with seeing those.
I got it up at the district office on a roll.
One can.
But that's
You got it
gonna
from
be-
our office?
Yes. it's
Okay,
50.
we have Doug Lozier, who is the
Oh.
union president, that has a comment.
Yeah, and he probably knows because he's probably seen this out on the street. So,
Hi, I'm Doug Lozier. As Chief Callan said, I'm the union president. We actually have little blue boxes that fit over the doorknob. I'm assuming that's what the person may be referring to. I'm not sure if we're still doing that program or not, but it is through our, if we are, it's still through our fire prevention division.
how about this? I'll find out and I'll get back to you. I'll get back to Diane and she can share with the whole board.
Sounds great.
Thanks.
You can get a new one.
Do you need one?
No, when I had an incident a few years
Mhm.
back. Where if I had had one, I wouldn't have had to buy a new front door, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, well, we had fun kicking that door in.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to our next topic, which is capital projects update again. Chief
Um,
Cowan.
Typically we talk about some of the things that might impact, you all and I'm not thinking of anything that's really gonna impact you guys for this year. We are investing, we did last year, we won't see it until at least 2024. A new ladder truck and a new fire engine. That eventually will help with you in providing services and so forth, but we won't see that. Believe it or not, it was a 28 and 30-month build for each of them, for the engine and ladder truck respectively. Other things that we're planning on doing, we're going to plan on hopefully doing some work here on the tower, on the training tower. And then there's some things that we're taking care of it on the stations, for replacement of HVAC units and things like that. But I don't know if there's anything really that is gonna pertain to y'all.
Just out of curiosity for training, especially since there's so much growth. I know at least in our service area with multifamily housing and buildings at heights we haven't seen before in this area. How does your staff train to suppress fires at 7 stories plus?
So we do train on all that. There is a big influx of a lot of multifamilies that are coming into the area. You're probably going to see some pretty significant change here in Kenmore as well. They are rezoning like actually from here east, similar to what Shoreline has been experiencing. So definitely going to see some higher density, and that's going to continue. It's one of the reasons why we invested in another ladder truck, is to have a dedicated reserve, from a capital project, standpoint. As far as training goes, there's laddering the structure and things like that, but the actual operations typically are not that much different from a 5-story to a 7-story.
Well, just curious, because I know you had some training opportunities in Shoreline on the west side of I-5 last week.
Right.
Single family housing. And, got to practice some things, but it seemed to me like that type of training didn't, in a lot of ways, didn't really apply to high rise.
No, it doesn't. We do try and take the opportunity when we have available structures and all that, but there's typically not those kinds of structures, to work on. But we do drill on the tower, and this is a great tower here. It's one of the best that I know of it anywhere in the region. And so we do multi-company operations here and, and training for those things. And when now and then, like Bellevue is, they took it down a high rise. So there was some training opportunities there as well. Yeah, it does bring up a good point too, from a capital standpoint, we are looking into the future from a strategic planning standpoint of looking at, this is for shoreline, of a new Station 62 down the road. But it's quite a few years out. It'll probably be 2028 or beyond. Because it addresses some of the growth that's going on. And that gets back to one of the things that we need to look at with Station 54, which is that building that Ken was talking about in South Kenmore.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next topic, and it's North City Water District Capital Projects Update.
So, yeah, like we have capital projects all around our district, but we're gonna focus on the ones in this area toward the park area. So, as Diane already talked about, is the Sound Transit project that's coming through, and we'll have we'll have some water line improvements as part of that project. We also have a project called Walkaway Crossing, which is supposed to tie the side over by the gas stations and shopping centers over to the Sheridan Beach area. And it was designed as a bore project to bore a water line underneath the highway there. We looked at some alternative and we're actually briefed the commissioners today that at our next board meeting we'll be presenting some alternatives, and we may not end up going across the highway. We've got this project. So anyway, there is that project that will give a redundant line where currently right now there's not a loop system and so on. And then just in that same area where Beach Drive crosses Macquarie Creek, we have the lines never got tied through the line coming from the north toward Macquarie Creek, and from the south Macquarie Creek, they never got tied together. And so we're going to look to do a bore on the creek there to tie those two together. So once again, we have a loop through there. And that's really all the projects we have in this area of the district.
So they just been throwing out our goals with capital projects is we want to improve the fire flow everywhere we can. And then water quality also. So wherever we have dead end lines that, come down, think of your end of your cul-de-sacs and they just end. If they had been designed properly, there would be a water line that would go up and connect to the next street up above. But these streets that come down dead ends, it's harder to get the adequate fire flow. And so we're looking for all those kind of opportunities to link them together.
Which we appreciate.
But we just wanted to put names and faces together and come down and chat with you. So thank you for allowing us to do that.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn the joint meeting unless there was any other questions.
I just want to second and thank you all for coming down. It's good to see your faces again.
And we'll see you, what is it, Thursday next week?
Yep, next
Okay.
Thursday.
What's the room?
I'll try and create some new stuff to tell you.
What is it? It is this Thursday. Back to
Oh, is it
back.
this Thursday?
Yeah. Check your calendar.
We did it both in one.
It is the ninth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Time flies.
This thing tells me
Fun.
everything.
Yeah, we're nothing important. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming
It
down.
is this Thursday. Yeah, I'll see you in 2 days.
Okay. New material.
I don't know if I can come up with it.
Yeah, you can.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, does anyone need a bathroom break before we start the next one?
No, Kevin's on a tighter too.
Okay. Alrighty, then we will go ahead and start our North Shore Board of Commissioner meeting. And when Amy has a second, we'll start with roll call.
Roll call. Commissioner Admin,
Here,
Commissioner Byers.
Present.
Commissioner Wolem,
Present.
Commissioner Pratt and Commissioner Webster are not available. Chief Cowan,
Here.
Legal Counsel Matt Paxton,
Here.
and Board Secretary Amy Oakley.
And we are going to start out with public comment, if anyone has any. Okay, and then we'll move on to approval of the agenda, and this is just for the North Shore Board meeting minutes.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Well, they're not here, so. Okay, then we're gonna go on to, what was that?
Motion carries.
Oh, yes, motion carries, sorry. And then we're gonna go on to North Shore Board discussion and possible action items. The first one is our NEMCO overview presentation. Is he still, oh, yes. Okay, I was like, did we run on too long? Okay.
Sorry,
Hi there.
Kevin.
No problem. I just,
He's got another commitment.
yeah, I got a few other things I do. Quick, perfect. So, I'm Kevin Lowry. I'm the new emergency manager for NEMCO, North Shore Emergency Management Coalition, which we are a partner of. So being that with COVID and a lot of changeover in most organizations, kind of doing a round robin, get around, talk to everybody, remind everybody kind of the goal of NEMCO, kind of the line of regionalization and helping to kind of save taxpayer money a little bit, make things kind of more coherent and efficient throughout the area. Kind of what NEMCO really does. Though. A lot of times when people turn over, and it was 2016 when the idea was formulated and created. So it's nice to kind of refresh everyone's idea on it, and also get a chance to see me, the new emergency manager, and kind of go with that. So really, the background here is in 2016 is kind of came to fruition, right? The combination of the four entities with the official interlocal agreement in 2017. This is kind of a breakdown of the finances, which hopefully you guys are all aware of, but most of the cities take a big brunt of it, followed by your fire district here, and then the utility district doing the 15% at the end there. With that ties in a 300-hour commitment for safety training, which the public works departments for both cities also partake in, which is usually like respiratory protection, fall protection, the typical things that are required when do that type of labor work that they hit each year. And then some other work for them that's unique to the water district. Next slide, please. So overall idea of our programs, and kind of before I get into this, I've kind of skipped over my own little introduction of my background a bit. So you know where I'm coming from, opposed to Carl Lunak, who was my predecessor, came out of that water district, did a lot of the safety coordinator piece of the water district. My background is I went to Merchant Marine Academy for college, sailed for a little bit, and then became a police officer. I worked on the road for about 13 and a half years before I went back into the Coast Guard, where I went on active duty the next 7 years. I also double with a Coast Guard hat here and there. So hence some other commitments I might have. But that kind of got me back into the realm of emergency management. I did a master's in emergency management from Massachusetts Maritime Academy, as well as a master's in administrative science, which is kind of a lot of public employment law and things like that. I used to be a union leader. Another hat I wore for a while. So in that, I also volunteered for firefighter. So I did that for about 10 years in 2 different entities, and I've kind of applied some lessons learned to the volunteer groups I coordinate, the surf group and the races group. One was a really professional, well-run fire department, 100 volunteers, 3 firehouses, 9 or 10 pieces of apparatus, we had an airport, hospital, 2 major highways, 42 square miles of town, 150,000 residents, all volunteer, run by paid chiefs, deputy chiefs and such from East Orange, Newark, right, big cities. So it was run right across. The next kind of an ad hoc, 6,000 resident town where you have a pulse, you jump in a fire truck and you go run something, right? So not exactly the ideal, still a lot of fun. But I kind of take that mentality when it comes to my volunteers with our CERT groups and things like that, and getting them really involved in this process. A lot of times they're put off out the pasture, kind of not utilized well, not trained well. I'm trying to kind of bring that up and we'll talk about that. Okay. So that's my operational background. I've done a lot in that realm in the Coast Guard. My previous job was was assistant operations officer on Cutter Healy, which I don't know if I'm familiar with that. It's the only federal Arctic research vessel. Goes up, breaks ice, does climate research. So a lot of that was policy writing, a lot of the work with the National Science Foundation, Office of Naval Research, so kind of in-depth admin history. So I kind of combine those two tasks to kind of come in here to NEMCO and try to kind of revolutionize, maybe make things more efficient and push us into a good spot with our overall emergency management. So that includes our Joint Emergency Operations Centers. This is the main one for Lake Forest Park, Kenmore right now, here at Station 51, with the backup EOC being over in the training room in Lake Forest Park's Town Hall. So issues you might know with that is that if there's a slide event at Town Hall right there, it's probably going to be gone. And so we were also looking at, we have a space in the city of Kenmore's Town Hall, and then NUD also has a space. However, if something happens to this area, all these would be gone. So we're trying to look at the idea of spreading out EOCs in a box. Basically, we can have them mobile, possibly integrate them into a community points of distribution type system, which I also mentioned when we talked about use of that building. That, you know, something to keep in mind is not just fire response, but overall emergency management. The space might be useful for a community point of distribution or some kind of storage, you know, emergency management function down there. Because I is one of my concerns if something happened to the bridges, that part of the city is disconnected a bit. So running these emergency operations centers, coordinating our services with our other utilities, Sun Energy, Seattle City Light, churches and business though as well. Business continuity is a big piece, especially in my history with our police department. Our city, we looked at our tax base and was like, hey, businesses are a major piece of our tax base. If something happened and they couldn't get back up and running, we're going to lose tax revenue. We're going to lose our ability to kind of have that continuity of government, continuity of operations. So business continuity is a pretty important piece of that. And the way emergency management works in my mind, it starts with the individual and the household, the block, the local community, and that includes things like churches and other organizations, senior centers, things like that, to kind of coordinate everyone together. The more self-sufficient everyone is, the less they'll have to rely on the government services, so that this way we could focus on the larger projects, our problems, and let the people handle it. So, and then I kind of act as a liaison through all the government, the city managers, the boards, and all that to help.
Kevin, I have a question.
Sure.
What's the geographic scope of NEMCO? Is it just Kenmore and Lake Forest Park, or because of North Shore Utility District, is it a larger area?
It's so interesting, especially now that you have Shoreline Fire contracted too. So we think a lot of just Lake Forest Park and Kenmore, but now we have Shoreline, city of Shoreline question hanging in the balance, but now that we're gonna be the fire department covering that far out, and you've contracted into NEMCO and kind of handed me off to the chief here, and we, seeing how that relationship's gonna work. So there's a little bit of a stretch to the west, and then you're right, with NUD going to the east, we hit a total of 5 cities, right? So it's Kirkland, Bothell, Woodinville, Lake Forest Park, and Kenmore. So they have a big scope, and that piece is where that liaison piece comes in, where I'm talking to their emergency managers. We're looking at, okay, well, if we are doing a water project or something happens here, what are we doing? Or the hospital that is served by NUD, they have their own emergency manager, coordinating with them to say, well, if we have a service disruption, how are we handling that? And some of our more security planning and earthquake preparation type stuff. So
just as a side note, we are in the process, Kevin kind of alluded to it. We're in the process of trying to figure, because there is some confusion about that. Confusion is, that's not the right word. We have some conflicting, scopes, and so one of the things that we're trying to look at is what is Shoreline, the city of Shoreline, and what is their role, and or whether or not they're interested in joining NEMCO or the other way around, or whatever that may look like, because it doesn't make sense for us to have the way it's set up now. So, I don't have anything to tell you more than that we are trying to explore it.
Okay.
At some point, I hope to have more stuff to come back to the board with.
okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so my goals and activities here. So We want to plan development and updates for our CMPs, every 5 years. That's your comprehensive emergency management plan. Each city is required to do one. What I'm looking on now is combining it to a one for the entire NEMCO region. There's one other coalition like this in the state, and that's how they do it. So all cities involved, they do one plan with annexes that have specific issues for each city, but it's one base plan.
Got ya.
And that makes it so much easier than like the last year was the Lake Forest Parks. This year's it's Kenmore, then more cities join in, and it's like, okay, well, now you have all these CMPs. My idea here with a lot of these policies and procedures, hazard mitigation plans, emergency notification procedures, all of that is to kind of, that's a point of regionalization, right? Kind of make it more efficient, make it more uniform response. The reason these cities got together and said, again, you guys as well, is like, hey, we're two small towns, we're small entities. We each of us having our emergency manager doesn't really make sense. Let's kind of combine efforts here. Well, if we combine efforts, but kind of stay completely separate when it comes to response or planning and all that, then we're muddying the water kind of, right? It gets confusing. There's different lines and boundaries, different policies. So trying to look at these policies, look at these procedures, put things together, make it really a coalition. So a lot of the ICS training I'm offering to city employees, I'm bringing them all together. And we're Lake Forest Park, get in here, shake hands, know each other, work together, and go.
From like a operational standpoint, like let's say we had an earthquake or some large scale disaster. What is the like communication like with, say, fire department? How would the fire department interact with NEMCO?
That's a really good question. That's exactly where that confusion is. Because if we have a big one where it's affecting both shoreline and Lake Forest Park, Kenmore areas, for us, the fire department operations is going to be at 61, and that's where the EOC is there. But Lake Forest Park, Kenmore are going to come here for the EOC. So how do we manage two different EOCs under one fire department operation? And that's exactly what we have to work on to get figured out. That's that confusion and scope of work.
Well,
way
and
we
also,
currently-
is the city over it or is the fire department over it? What's the chain of
So if
command?
you have,
So, there's partners with the NEMCO, but for fire department operations is under shoreline. Kevin is managing all emergency. So outside, he has a bigger scope than the shoreline fire department. And he's representing the two cities and NUD, in that side of it. So, but under typical EOC operations, the fire department does the fire department stuff and it's typically not super active in the ICS structure of an EOC. I mean, you have a liaison and all that, but we're typically dealing with the immediate acute emergency stuff. And then as it transitions away from, rescue, into more of a recovery, more of a long-term or multiple IAPs or incident.
operational periods.
Then that's when you're starting to transition really, and the fire department really kind of stops being part of it, and the rest of the operations continues on. It just really depends on the nature of the emergency.
The way we're currently set up is we would have two EOCs running with the unified command, probably in each looking at the overall disaster, which includes like some structural integrity of buildings, having the building departments doing inspections and fire department doing the fire response. And the fire department have an operations center in 61. But really the expectation would be that there needs to be a liaison in each one of those EOCs.
And that's
So-
what we do. If we had the big one today, we'd set up our operations up at 61. I'd have a liaison here that would help coordinate between our overall fire department response, but it'd also be part of the bigger
picture.
EOC picture.
But that's where we start talking about efficiencies, because you only have so many deputy chiefs,
Exactly.
battalion chiefs, and you extend an operational
Actually,
period.
afford to-
Yeah.
So it would make more sense, hopefully down the road, to regionalize a bit and have one main EOC with.
And
it's
then
still
you have to
probably
deal with
fire ops.
communication between here and there.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the goal. So and that's part of my big push. to kind
Good
of-
question.
Great question. And part of what I'm doing here is reviewing plans, reviewing procedures from each entity is try to see, well, where is there an overlay that's a conflict? Kind of like what we're talking about here. I use the example, my old police chief used to write policy that demanded the state police to do certain things. And it's kind of like, well, wait a second, if you even talk to the state police to see if they're going to do that or if they're able to do that. And that's kind of reviewing policy and seeing if there's overlaps between what the water district's expectation is versus what your expectation is, and then what the cities are all planning to do. And then staff training. So like I mentioned, the safety training for NUD, but the ICS training for city employees. And I'm kind of trying to integrate that into a plan where we start with a refresher of everyone post-COVID of, hey, here's what ICS looks like and what we're supposed to be doing. Building into hopefully in June, having a tabletop exercise here in this room, and then November, a tabletop plus, to hopefully have some actual functional components to it. On the small side, we also do with these things called rapid damage assessments, which are windshield assessments. They drive around the city and look for damage. I would like to start integrating that more to the police departments will do it too, and maybe in the fire department will get out there and we'll find damage post earthquake or other natural disaster to do a quick survey. And I eventually would like everyone working together because it's a coalition, right? So kind of moving through this some more, again, the community outreach, this is a quick slide, business. Our fairs, our preparedness fairs, doing workshops in the community. Go out and doing some planning. So I've worked with a couple of churches, kind of do a walk around the building, talking about their safety programs and things like that. And then typical our neighborhood outreach. So Map Your Neighborhood kind of went away. It phased off. It started with it's like a 2-week ready is currently where it's at, but they're even talking about that going away and making it, expanding it out even further to basically focus on home preparedness and then out, kind of like the push now. So whatever they're going to call it, essentially it's going to communities, teaching people how to be prepared, giving talks to the community, and getting tabling events, and then our workshops, which we've been running one a quarter at least. We're starting with this kind of emergency communications piece for people using GRMS radios, ham operators, to kind of get them into the preparedness mindset. It's been pretty well received so far.
I have another question.
Sure. Next slide.
Do you ever offer training to fire department personnel?
Not yet, but I'm willing to.
'Cause it just occurred to me, I don't know how much fire department personnel have had this type of like carry your own home type thing. But I could kind of see people sort of leaning on like off-duty fire department personnel. If there was some sort of disaster, to be sort of a local resource where they live. It seems like that would be something we could potentially offer just as a way to get the.
It'd be nice to have some messaging out there through either the website and or social media too, as to the expectations, because some people think don't need to have anything stored up or anything like that, that they can just call 911. They might even be able to call 911, depending, but certainly the preparedness side. So,
But also I think of like the community emergency response team training, probably a good chunk of that. Your average firefighter has had a bunch of that training already, but with a smaller condensed version could essentially be that type of resource, but they wouldn't need the full training.
Yeah, it's also, we used to think about if you go home from work and you're at your house, you're like, okay, well, if there's really a disaster, I'll probably be at work. We all kind of also forget, like, oh, I got to drive there. I got to figure out what bridge still works. I gotta have that go bag in my truck to make sure I can get there if it happens in between. Right. So that's the idea with, like, yes, give us some training on it. Don't forget, make sure your family's ready, because we had Hurricane Sandy, which thankfully I was on vacation, I think, for it. It's like one of my favorite vacations. But we get these 100-year storms, these big hurricanes every year, and it's like, oh, I'm at work for 3 or 4 days straight, right? And it's like, well, what's my family taken care of? Is the house stocked up and is it prepared to? And that resiliency, even within the firefighters' families, helps that make them able to go to work, their mind clear, focus on what they're doing rather than worrying about, is my dog getting cooked, right? So
Andrew Leaf has developed an app. That's a pretty cool app.
He just spoke to the King County Board of Commissioners.
So it's something that we can. It's definitely a good point of messaging out.
Mhm.
all right, continue on. So our volunteer organization, like I said, we have 2 main prongs. We have the community emergency response team and we have the ham operators. So this is what I was handed. The spreadsheet of over like 350, almost 400 names of volunteers. So that's everyone who's ever taken a class with them, right? Under calls, period. Of that, about 65 or so were actually credentialed volunteer emergency workers who can respond out in the field. And post-COVID, we've had about 30 or so that have been active, coming back out and helping with those things. One of the most, it's on the slide, one of the most recent things is after the fire at Perry Landing, where the residents were displaced, they've been helping them move. So even consistent, like the fire service piece of it's over, kind of talk about emergency management, how it's a bigger picture. The fire service piece is over. They're still without power. They're in like that recovery phase. The residents still need something. So we were able to activate some of our volunteers to get out there, help people move in and out of apartments as they're finding other housing in the process. Delivered food right away afterwards as well. And then did some of that other kind of, my view of volunteers is firefighters and paramedics are highly trained to do special, jobs. And if there's gaps in there that we can save, having to use a firefighter for, and have an educated community member, that's 1,000 times better. The bridge dedication is a really good example. They closed down the bridge, 2,000 people were there trying to get an aid truck through 2,000 people, before we had 2 scrapes, lacerations of the foot and one of the hand. So imagine trying to get an aid unit down through 2,000 people just to put a Band-Aid on something, right? So our basic first aid trained CERT members, we still have a medical aid tent, basic first aid, clean the cut, put a Band-Aid on it, have a nice day, we didn't need to call the fire department. So that's kind of the stopgap. Same thing with like directing traffic and some of the other basic police functions that they can help with, searching for missing persons, things like that, where you just need to plus up your force with some educated volunteers. They're great for that. So we do planned events and we do some emergency response. So we have our amateur radio operators. Well, a lot of the communication redundancy we talk about, especially as we wait for PCERN to be distributed, figured out, I don't know. A lot of our backups is we have a radio room right here. So we have ham operators there. And as I've learned, because on the boat, I supervised our radios. It was like HF, secure comms type stuff on the boat. So, and I kind of got a glimpse at it, but the ham operators, oh, they go so much further into it, right? So they can actually send emails. You can make phone calls via ham. Like there's a lot of usage from the ham radio that I didn't even realize existed. So we're setting up this thing called WinLink. So you can send emails back and forth. And the idea is if there's a resource request, internet's down, web EOC is not working, bare minimum, we can type up an email and send it to the county for a resource request. Like we need more sandbags, we need more water. And it can all travel through the ham radio, which is a little bit more resilient in times of like an earthquake or a big disaster. So they're great. They work here in EOC and in the field, and I'm trying to develop with this community points of distribution program, like mobile trailers where they can operate ham radios out of. And then actually, Snohomish County does it where they're ham operators and they can set up Wi-Fi. So you can also then have Wi-Fi with it. Like we saw at the bulk fire, like the cell towers melted, like all the antennas melted off the tower. So it's like they had no Wi-Fi, and no cell service. So they were able to put their trailers in place, put up their own antennas, and everyone had cell service and Wi-Fi. So that's our ham radio operators, and then the community emergency response. Everyone's pretty familiar with the green vest running around, but it's a really good force, basic force, 24 hours in the state of Washington. Our team, to include the ham operators, everyone trains monthly. So we do a meeting 4 hours every Tuesday, and then a Saturday morning we'll do 4 hours of training. So they get 8 hours of training per month. So they stay pretty consistent, and we've become pretty active since the end of COVID. But some of the tasks they can help with is basic first aid, or triage, large searches, traffic control, and then obviously community sheltering. Yeah. Any questions? All right, that's NIMCO in a nutshell for you.
Thanks for coming.
No, yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, good.
No,
I gotta get hesitant, man.
you gotta run. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna announce that Commissioner Pratt is joining the meeting.
There we go. Hi, Josh.
I was gonna mention too, we're fortunate to get Kevin, as part of NIMCO, and he's done a great job of trying to catch up because Carl left us with, we were without an emergency manager for feels like about 2 years,
Oh, wow.
at
That's a long
least a
time.
year and a half.
Okay. Ooh,
So I wanted to say he's doing a great job. Thank you.
thank you.
Off to the search rescue.
Okay. Okay, and we're gonna move on to discussion, or 9.2, discussion on policy 1450. The meeting minutes.
Sure. Amy, do you want me to lead that? Because I worked. on
Yes,
that with
please,
Commissioner Webster. Amy, are you able to share that document?
That was pretty impressive. I was about
I
say
know.
that.
I'm like, I can't remember where I put one thing, let alone. You would have had me lost a while ago.
So this was,
There.
okay. Okay, so this policy, which covers commissioner meeting minutes, did not previously cover the recording of our meetings in audio or visual manner. And so Commissioner Webster and I formed a committee to review this policy and came up with some proposed policy language changes to reflect our current practice of recording the meetings. And so in red on the document being shared there, it indicates what the changes were. And we also ran this by our legal counsel, Matt Paxton, who had some additional suggestions just to make it completely correct. So as you can see, the document under section 2.3 added a reference to the RCW section on recording or online streaming. Responsibility, we added 3.3 board meetings should be recorded in audio format or audio visual format in accordance with this policy. So currently, I believe we just record them in an audio format, but at some point in the future, we might move to a full audio visual recording. And so we would not have to update this policy. Continuing down. This 5.3 section was added, except for executive sessions, board meetings should be recorded using AV capture or similar. However, the district cannot guarantee the quality of the audio recording will be continuous and fault-free. 5.3.1 recordings are for information purposes only. The approved minutes of each meeting shall serve as the official record of the meeting. 3.2 at the commencement of each meeting, there should be an announcement that the meeting is being recorded. 5.3.3 the retention of audio recording should be in accordance with RCW 40.14.070 and the retention schedules established by Washington State Archives. Access to archived audio recording should be in accordance with chapter 42.56 RCW. And then we added 6.8 audio recordings. This, I believe, in the section I think is procedure. Audio recordings or audio or visual recordings, if available, will be posted to the department website along with meeting minutes. So essentially that just reflects our current practice. So I think we're ready to adopt this policy. If first, I guess we should see if there's any questions or any other additional changes that people would like to make, and then I think we could probably move towards adopting this policy.
I do not have any further questions. Did you have any?
I don't, so I'll go ahead and make a motion that we move to approve policy 1450 into procedure, and then begin discussion if necessary.
Okay, and I'll second that motion.
Discussion.
Is there any discussion on this?
I don't have any additional discussion. I don't know if Commissioner Pratt or Matt Paxton do.
I was just gonna second the motion, but also speaking in favor of the motion to approve this new policy. Everything looks good, and I appreciate the hard work that you guys put in.
Mr. Paxton, any comments?
Well, I'll just say that the law does not require you to do this, but it does encourage you to do record your meetings. So this is consistent with the trend that we're seeing for these public meetings.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And no one's here to oppose, so I already forgot what I'm supposed to say.
Motion passes unanimously.
Motion passes unanimously. Gosh.
We'll train
I'll
you
get
up.
there. I'll
We'll
get
you
there.
trained up as a chair. Don't stress.
So now we're gonna go on to 9.3 2022 budget reconciliation discussion.
Yes, so I sent you an email with the, maybe we can bring it, thank you. So I tried to put some details in the email to walk you guys through, this process and all that, and I do have a couple of questions. I need to tell you that, not that good. Being off by 0.89%, I went home and told my wife.
For the record.
I think hats off to staff and in that, I think we did a good job of trying to forecast out and budget and all that. But I would not have guessed that we were gonna be that close. So, I can walk through this if you'd like. I put it in the email, but,
Mhm.
really, this is the reconciliation of salary and benefits, in the budget. The only thing that, is, I guess what you call in play or could, vary would be the operations costs, which are the ones, if you highlight in green off to the right. I evaluated as per the discussion and direction from the board
Mhm.
as to what the true hourly costs were for staffing the 51-57 units. That percentage came up to 38.49%. We had budgeted 37.9%. So I applied that 38.49 to the actuals, which was the driver of actually the 0.89% difference. If you take that 0.89% off, we were up by $6,000, which is, I don't know, less than 0.1%, I think. But and it's not that surprising considering that overtime was higher than expected to. So that was kind of consistent with the expectation. So unless there's questions, I will direct our staff to invoice the North Shore Fire Department for just under $45,000 as a reconciliation.
I didn't have
Any
any
questions?
questions.
I do have two questions to bring up to the board for consideration. As we're moving forward, we're going to, I'll be doing this reconciliation again, which it takes quite a bit of time to do, which is fine. But one of the concerns I have, and it worked out, we were fairly accurate, first of all. And second of all, from the shoreline budget side, this is money that's coming into the shoreline budget, so it's not a problem.
Mhm.
But let's take it more to an extreme of, let's say it's like $300,000 that we were off, and it was shoreline owing that money back to the North Shore Fire Department. So, I've built the budget around a balanced budget, and so if I all of a sudden had to come up with $300,000, that would throw our budget way out of whack. And I haven't decided on this yet, and I'm looking for some input too. Like, do we take this out of reserves? Do we put the money back into reserves? How do we, move this money around? Because I would hate to have to, go through the whole year of an upside down budget because of a transfer out. So I asked both to take a look at this and consider it, and also to reach out to an auditor to make sure it's as clean as possible from an auditing standpoint.
Just to make sure I understand your question. So you're saying in either case, if you under or overestimate the budget, you could come up with an issue. Like you're
Right.
saying, if you underestimate the budget and now North Shore has to come up with this additional money, or you're saying if Shoreline has to come up?
No,
with
in
additional
this case, North Shore needs to come up with some extra money. However, if it was short, because the shoreline budget is what's balanced, North Shore can just take it out of reserves or out of the operating budget even. But if shoreline, I balance the budget, and it's not a super big deal. But if I'm balancing the budget and now I have to come up with, say, 300,000, or hopefully not more than that, but let's just say it's $300,000. Do I take it out of reserves? Do I take it out of the operating, fund? How do I account for it in the budget?
Isn't that a question for the Shoreline Commissioners?
But there's a point to this.
Okay.
So, and I've got both looking at too from an auditing standpoint, because it also, potentially impacts the North Shore, Fire Department too, in that, where do you want to take the money out of? And accounting for it in a budget, or do we put a line item into the budget and just put a number in there? Because I'm not going to know what the reconciliation is until the end of the year, well past the time that we've established the following year's budget. And so, and we could just take it in and out of reserves potentially. Again, I'm waiting for some auditor feedback on this too.
Right.
But, and I don't need a decision tonight. I'm just posing this as because we have time,
Right.
To get this figured out. But it's something, to think about, as to where it comes, because I don't want it affecting, I'm trying to nail down the budget and trying to be accurate to that budget, and you need to hold me accountable
Right.
to that budget. And this is not something that I have any control over or
Right.
know of what that number is until until we've already established the budget.
Right.
So something to think about, you know, and then
Okay.
the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that one of the problems I have in our current budget, in the shoreline budget, is that it's support services, which has fleet and facilities both embedded in the same area of the budget,
Mhm.
which is problematic in trying to pull out and decipher, because there's two different percentages that are applied depending on if it's a fleet or a facilities.
Mhm.
And so this year, we're adding a facilities technician, so we'll have 2 and 2. So one thing to think about and to consider is can I blend the two percentages together? Because it is probably not a big difference, you know, and I don't know the percentages on, I haven't, it's the percentages on there. Can we meet in the middle and use that percentage, or do I need to do the work and pull and separate and do the rework the budget, pull all the fleet out to a separate area and the facilities out to a separate area, you know, so that I can account for them on those percentages. So
Okay.
am I making sense?
Yes, that makes sense to me.
Eric looks like he's trying to think about this.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about, I guess, the significance of it, you know, one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't think it shouldn't change things much at all. I mean, it's gonna be.
I mean, essentially, what you're saying is we have some shared costs.
Yeah,
We have shared costs that are allocated between shoreline and North Shore according to a set percentage. And that
Right.
percentage varies depending on the area that we're talking about. And so you have a particular formula for fleet and one for facilities, and they're different.
right, so the fleet costs, are 38.1%. And the facilities are 33.3%. So I apply those percentages to the fleet costs and the other one to the facilities cost. Unfortunately, in our budget, all of those are kind of lumped into the same area. So I have to go line by line and try and figure out how to pull those out to those percentages. What I would prefer to do is split the difference between those two percentages and apply it to that whole section. If that
Gotcha.
makes sense. I don't think it'll change things much either way, and it still gets us a defendable, accuracy.
Yeah.
In my opinion, or I do the work and I change out and I do the work this year to separate out all those different line items and all that, which changes kind of the format and stuff of the budget, which I can do that too. It's just, it's laborious,
Yes.
doing this reconciliation, which is again, something that we need to do. I'm not saying no, I'm just trying to look for ways to make it a little bit easier.
Right.
So, and those percentages don't change unless we change the root cause of that formula, which is the number of facilities, the number of apparatus, things of that nature, which doesn't change much or may not change ever, so. So again, I don't necessarily need a decision tonight, but something to think about and then maybe give me some direction. So
I would recommend that we include Commissioner Webster in the discussion as
Yeah.
well, because he's a detailed numbers guy and might have a unique perspective on.
right.
this
Amy, can
topic.
you put that into next month's meeting to discuss?
So it's the accounting for fleet and facilities.
Right.
Shared.
You could just probably put
You can just-
calculations used in budget reconciliation.
And just have a discussion on it. And then, and hopefully Rick is, what's that?
Maybe just some options, like what proposals of.
Yeah, I can even do an evaluation of like, how accurate would it be if I split the difference, kind of thing, and give you a guess now, like, are we talking about tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, of thousands of
Right.
dollars? I don't think it's gonna be a big number.
Okay,
But especially since we're adding a facilities technician.
right,
So right now there's 2 fleet, 1 facilities, but there's gonna be 2 and
2 and 2.
So the costs are gonna be roughly split.
Right,
There's differences in salaries and stuff like that, but the costs are roughly gonna be split could we split the difference on the percentage? Or I could even figure out exactly, maybe it's not right in the middle because there is differences in salaries. I can figure out exactly where it should be in between the two of them.
Maybe it depends on the order of magnitude, because I think essentially our concern as a group of commissioners would just be that the costs are allocated correctly to our group of citizens.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and honestly too, you're talking about $743,000 in a $23 million, so I mean, you're not talking about a huge portion of the budget that's even going to have these percentages applied to it. The biggest portion is the operations by far.
Yeah.
So a percentage change there or so might have maybe $10,000 assigned to it. A percentage change here is minimal. Especially when we're talking about splitting the difference.
Right.
But I can come back, and that's a good point. I can come back with, here's a couple of ideas.
Yeah.
And see what's, or you just tell me, I'll go back and make the budget more split out and complicated, so
Okay,
just looking to try.
make it a little smoother.
And by then I should have an answer back from an auditor of what they're recommending as far as where the money.
That would
Comes in
be
and out.
helpful. That would be helpful.
And you could also, I don't know. Maybe it's not relevant at all. You could also look just at if there's other instances of this type of contract relation. Is there a certain way they do it, which seems to work or not?
Yeah, I was gonna reach out to Eastside because they've done, I'm guessing that they just have a fund that comes in and out. Yeah. So, just want to make sure that from that, on this part of it, that I'm clean with the auditor.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Josh looks like.
Oh, sorry, Josh. I apologize. I didn't see you. Go ahead.
No worries. It was a comment or question more in reference to avoiding the problem of gross overpayment or underpayment. Does it make sense to have a more frequent reconciliation assessment? Right, so instead of waiting till the end of the year, we could do that on a quarterly basis or biannual basis to make sure that we're not dramatically over or underpaying for services.
I will be able to report out, on a monthly basis, how we're doing towards our budgeted amount. I get as part of a financial report. And I can tell you how we're doing against our budget, because if we're accurate against our budget amount, the reconciliation should not be much regardless, whether it's up or down. As long as we're saying, now if I'm saying I'm off of our budget by say 10% or something, extreme. Now that would be, that could be a problem and all that, but I would really hesitate to try and this takes many hours of work. I really am not interested in reconciling, on an ongoing basis unless you direct me to do so.
No, I just was trying to address your concern of us grossly overpaying initially, and then you having the responsibility to compensate us back in some fashion.
Right.
So
No,
what's worse, right? Having to dig into the budget and find $300,000, or go through the time and expense of having a more frequent assessment of what we actually owe.
the reconciliation process, again, the only percentage that will change is the operations record, that formula. It's actually going line by line and putting all the actuals in, and then there's different areas of the budget that I pull out for the administrative cost, or I pull out for this, and that's the tedious part. So I feel fairly confident that as long as we're staying close to the budget, then the reconciliation should not be much up or down, over or under. And that would be the good benchmark of, now if we're starting to go way out of whack. I got to tell you, remember too, that 2023 is going to be an interesting budget year to see how accurate. Don't hold me to the 0.89%.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I'm really hoping that I'm under 5% off. I really try to be 1%, maybe 2% normally. I'm really hoping I'm only 5% off. If I'm under 5%, then I'm gonna be pretty happy. happy. And if I'm under 1 or 2%, I'm gonna be really happy. So I just, again, that was that part of the conversation we had last fall,
Yeah,
but.
yeah.
So this year, and maybe to your point, Commissioner Brad, is, I try and keep a good eye on this throughout the year to make sure that maybe this is a year that I spend more time, trying to, make sure that we're staying, that from a reconciliation standpoint, that we're staying accurate so that we get to the next, when we're budgeting for 24, and maybe we put a line item in there, for estimated, we do that for deployments, we do it in and out. We budget on the expense and the revenue side for deployments. Maybe we do something like that. And that's one of the suggestions that both and I came up with. And I'll come back to the next meeting with some ideas.
Okay, that sounds great.
I don't know, Chief, you set the bar pretty high. I think that expectations are set, so.
Well, thank you, but, yeah.
We can pass a resolution that the reconciliation cannot be farther off.
I was really happy that we were that accurate, but then I immediately was like, oh my goodness, am I gonna be held to this? So I was pretty happy.
Okay, so we have no board resolutions to discuss. So the next would be the consent agenda.
I'll move to accept the consent agenda, to pass the items on the consent agenda.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, so that will pass unanimously. Dang it. Okay, and then meeting, is that included our meeting minutes, or does the meeting minutes have to be approved separately? Perfect. Okay. So going on to reports, we have 12.1, the chief's report.
Did you have any questions?
I personally did not. Anyone else? Josh, Commissioner Pratt.
Yeah. It's just a question in reference to the status of firefighters that are still out because of failure to get vaccinated. I know that, we started with South King County rehiring. Now East Side is rehiring, Bothel's rehiring. And just what's the status of any firefighters in North Shore or Shoreline, and more broadly, where do you see King County going as a whole with these agencies starting to break ranks?
That's a great question. I was supposed to meet with the exec team this morning, and things went awry. So we weren't able to meet this morning to discuss. Actually Doug Loger's on, and he forwarded some information on this county stance. I need to do a little research on what the county's position is on this, but on the surface, and you can't hold me to this because I haven't made this decision yet, but I'm leaning towards, offering up, to rehire. That's what I'm leaning at this point. Again, I want to meet with my staff to make sure that we're, all in agreement on it, which would mean, we have one paramedic. We have 2 firefighters that could potentially return. I don't believe that the 2 firefighters are interested in returning. I believe that our paramedic will likely want to return. I'm not sure. And at that point, we'll have to look at what that rehire process looks like. We're coming up on a year from his separation. So we'll have to look at that rehire process. That's all. So I really think that we're talking about one paramedic is really what we're, is the impact of this. We will have one of our current fire marshal staff that will receive a bump in pay because of the restrictions due to the lack of vaccine. There was a 10% reduction in that person's pay. And so that person would get that pay bump back. But that's, we have pretty limited exposure on this. We are in the process, we are potentially in the one of the firefighters that was separated was actually a legacy North Shore person who has been involved previously, at least, in a class action lawsuit. I'm not gonna comment on that, and I'm sure Matt Paxton would agree not to comment on this. And I have had some conversations with that individual about returning previously for some temporary or part-time work, and he has not been interested. I don't know if this will change due to a full-time position or not. It's probably about as far as I should comment at this point.
So can we, Amy, put this on to discuss next time? Because I would.
I will make a decision here in the next day or two, and I can shoot you guys an email,
Perfect.
because this is a pressing issue.
Yeah,
I thought I was gonna get to it today and be able to report out. And I
Yeah.
did.
I would also
So-
be interested to hear about any training that might be necessary to get them back up to speed.
Yeah, that's gonna be for that. Well, actually, potentially the firefighter's return as well. That is part of that conversation we need to have on the rehire process. I am planning on meeting again tomorrow morning, actually, with our Chief Foster, and so should be able to give you guys, a decision from that point forward.
Great, thank you. Are there
I had
any?
one
oh,
other question on
Okay.
the chief's report, which would just be the hospital capacity meeting. Was that just a meeting in-house of our personnel, or was it a meeting with some hospitals, or what was that?
Right. So as you all know, we have a pretty significant hospital capacity issue that's affecting the transfer of patients and into the hospital and out of the hospital. I represent a committee that's looking at this issue. I represent the King County Fire Chiefs on this committee. This committee there's representatives from nurses, assisted living, hospitals, the county exec's office, King County EMS, state legislation, lobbyists, and I'm representing the fire chiefs. So it's much bigger than just internal, and so I'm pretty passionate about trying to address this issue. And in fact, I'll tell you about a little bit of a pilot program here in a second. But so we sit and we talk about all the legislation and the impacts and all that, trying to figure out what are some of the short and long-term solutions to this, because there's not one silver bullet or a certain law or bill that's going to fix this. It's
So
getting,
Chief, can I pause you for 2 seconds?
sure.
I just wanted to explain what it is. So what we're having is what the
I
fire,
listened to the recording of last meeting.
so you got the wall time idea and that we're having to wait. Okay,
Right.
just wanted to make sure you were
Thank you.
up to
That's-
speed with our terminology.
Thank you. That's a really good point. Again, I sometimes fast forward into things, acronyms especially. So everybody's experiencing this, wherever you go, pretty much. Some certain places are better than others, of course, and hospitals and different timing and all that. So there is some legislation that is starting to be introduced to address some of these things. I actually testified against a bill that was being introduced that had to do with holding hospitals accountable to nurse ratios, which is a good thing. I testified against it, but bear with me for a second. I think it's a really good thing. I think that not overloading the nurses and a proper work environment, is a really good thing. However, we're in a crisis. Now is not the time. And that's what I actually testified. There was a bunch of people that testified, and there was a lot of pro statements before. And I actually, first thing I said when I testified was, you know what, I agree and believe and support everything that's been said on the pro side. I said, but now is not the time. And the reason why is because our hospitals are hanging on by their fingernails. And we're experiencing it. And from a selfish standpoint, I need to look at it from a fire department operations standpoint and the services we're providing to our citizens. I need to be able to get our patients into the hospital. I need to get that rig back into service to be available for the next 911 call. And so when we experience half hours, somewhat acceptable, but an hour, 2 hours, 3.5 hours to offload a patient, I cannot support something that is going to make that worse. And so that's what I testified to. And I said, please, if you're going to implement this, again, lots of good pieces to that legislation, phase it in, give some time for the hospitals to recover financially, for the nurses to get trained up, for the nurses to get, assigned to, to get back into the system. And it's not just hospitals, it's the assisted living and the other places, because the hospitals will want to discharge somebody into another facility or someplace else, and they can't. There's no place to go. There's a nursing shortage everywhere. It's systemic. So that's just one piece that I testified against. But there are other pieces, other bills that are being introduced, and I don't have the numbers with them. They're still in the works, for helping out with the training opportunities, with support, financial support, with some of these, helping, with the big one is addressing Medicare and Medicaid, finances, and it's not been adjusted. It needs to be adjusted. Things of those things of that nature will help, and again, there's multiple pieces to this, both short and long term, and so that's what I sit on the committee for, is trying to represent the chiefs at the state level, with this, with these actions or these bills. So one of the things that I am working on in the short term to address, and I've got permission, I just recently got permission on this, is again, it's a very small piece, but it's the piece that affects us and our citizens, is having somebody at the hospital when they have delayed wall times, getting the patients transferred in, is to assign an EMT to the hospital to manage and monitor the patients that are in the hallway. And so instead of an 8-car with 2 people with a patient in the back of the 8-car sitting there, and multiple 8-cars or ambulances, that at least from the fire department standpoint, that unit could offload the patient and either put them in a wheelchair, or you leave them on our gurney, transfer them to a hospital gurney, whatever we need to do. And then if there's multiple, patients in a hallway or in a room or someplace, having an EMT monitor those patients to make sure that they aren't becoming critical or getting sicker, or whatever in time, and buy time, for the hospitals so that they can admit them. But the big piece of that is to get our 8-car back in service and back, in the district. So I have permission to start exploring that with one hospital, but it's Northwest down here, and first of all, I need to make sure that the hospital is okay with it, and that, and if they give permission, that I can develop a program to allow for how we're going to staff an EMT to go do this. And I've got the county to cover it for the financial side of it. So we don't have to pay for it, because I was like, look, if the hospitals aren't going to do this, which I think it's their obligation, their responsibility, if they're not going to do it, because they don't have nurses to do it, well, then maybe I can send an EMT or a paramedic to go do that. But I don't believe that should be financially on us to pay for it, because it's a regional need, it's a regional benefit, it's their responsibility. So I've got and the hospitals don't have any money for it, because they're like, well, why did I spend money for an EMT when I could spend money towards a nurse?
Right.
So I got King County EMS to cover this for a limited time to see what the benefits are and see if it's providing some of the relief or not. So it's in the works. And so we'll see what happens. I should, by our next meeting, I should have a decent report out on this. So that was a long answer to your question.
That's okay.
So now 12.2 commissioner reports. Are there any commissioner reports?
I just want to say I came in this last Sunday with my son's Boy Scout group, and they did an excellent job. Like the guys all came down, spent time with them in the bay, putting on the rigs, got a great tour. Wendy Booth came in on her off day and led a little class. My only concern that I have with that is one of the first questions was, how many of you kids have had a fireman come into the classroom? These are all 3rd graders, and except for the ones that have been in my son's class and had me show up, no hands were raised. And so now I feel like we're missing, thousands of kids with this community outreach and getting there. I know that COVID's been a big, that's put a stop to everything. My hope is that we get those programs up and going, and I don't know if there's any word on that, or if that's been an issue on your guys' end too.
I hadn't heard about that specific issue, but we do need to ramp up on the pub ed side. And in fact, we're going to have a meeting on that too, to discuss what we need to do. And if we have enough work for another full-time pub ed person, and or if there's some job or role sharing that can occur, with maybe some part-time and some other things. Another piece that we really need to address is kind of niche, skill is social media management. And so we're looking at either contracting that out or seeing if we have any staff that has that skill set and desire, to fulfill it, because it's some weeks it may only be a few hours a week, and other weeks maybe it's even 20 hours a week or more, so it's kind of hard to. So, we'll either bury that probably in a position that has multiple, roles, or contract it out to a third party, something like that. But another piece of this is that pub ed piece. And so actually, I even had a conversation earlier today about with a person as to whether or not they were interested in maybe looking to add that into their, responsibilities. So thank you for bringing it up though, because it is, we're missing on a few things. And part of this is the remnants of the COVID and the pandemic and gearing back up. There's another one that I really want us to get into, adult family homes and look at fall prevention and start doing some adult training too. So it's kind of the gamut, kids and, some of our older population.
Okay, no more commissioner reports. Mr. Paxton, legal counsel report.
Sure, I can give you a couple updates on recent changes in the law since we last met. So in January, two things came down the pipeline that I think might be relevant to the district. The first is you've heard a little bit about this, but we've seen a remarkable increase in the public record requests that have been submitted to public agencies, including some agencies that have, or some requesters have less than honest intent. Now, I'm not suggesting that's happened to North Shore or Shoreline, but in my practice, I've seen it from other districts. On January 26th, there's a bipartisan group in the state Senate that introduced a bill called Senate Bill 5571 that really is trying to address the proliferation of these public record requests that are being made for improper purposes. Examples include people making requests to harass the agency, to cause increases in the costs of government operations, or just to pursue money, to get awards through the courts for districts that don't handle public record requests exactly correctly. So this legislation, if it was passed, would create an appeals process to kind of resolve these disputes before they got to court. It would require the requester to certify that the request is not being made for an improper purpose. And it would give the courts more discretion in deciding whether or not to award attorney's fees if a requester does prevail in these lawsuits. So it's currently a bill, it's in the committee process, so it's a bit of a long shot from getting signed into law, but it's something that we're monitoring pretty closely. If it passes, the district would experience probably a reduced volume of public record requests. In the past, we thought the legislator was headed towards the other direction, that they want to make it more easier for public to access public records. But we're pleased to see that there's kind of a bipartisan effort to address what I think is a pretty obvious issue, that some people are making significant amount of money where their only job is to sue public agencies for violating public record requests that in some cases are unclear in the first place, and you don't know why they're making the requests. So I don't know if the chief wants to speak on this at all. I did send this to him as soon as I saw it. I know it's something he's been monitoring.
I was very excited. I actually knew about it before, but thank you, Matt, for keeping an ear to the ground on this. I shared with you my committee involvement on the hospital capacity thing. I also represent the King County Fire Chiefs in the legislative committee at the state level, so I'm for everything, everything. And I have for years been trying to, our lead lobbyist, his name is Dylan Doty. And I said, Dylan, please keep your ear to the ground on anything that has to do with, removing, because I completely agree with everything he said. Legitimate, appropriate public records, because I'm totally fine with. But I think I've shared with the board, I had one individual that made over 400 requests last year alone. And so I was looking for anything that would help in taking away some of that power. And so I was pretty excited about this. It doesn't go as far as I'd like it to go to, but it's definitely a way to stop some of the more, and even have it in there frivolous, lots of, if you'd like to, I can forward you the draft bill as it is, or Matt can, either or, but I actually have reached out to the senator and the two representatives that are supporting this bill to see if I will be down there in uniform, helping, support this if that's what it takes. So fingers crossed.
Happy to hear that one.
Yes.
Well, that's the good news in my report. Now onto the bad news. So the public duty doctrine has historically been a protection for public agencies from liability for performing their public duties. It's said that a duty owed to all is a duty owed to none. So public agencies have relied on the public duty doctrine to limit their liability and say, maybe I made a mistake, but I was acting in a government function when I was doing that. I can't be held liable. So that's historically protected fire districts from potential liabilities when it's responding to fire and EMS emergencies. Over the more recent years, Washington courts have really narrowed that exception, or that limitation on liability, which has increased public agencies' exposure to lawsuits. And on January 12th, the Washington Supreme Court further limited the scope of the public duty doctrine, and it's really relevant to EMS agencies. So in that case, a spouse called 911 seeking medical aid for her husband. That person was having a heart attack. The city of Seattle's EMS providers were given the correct address for the unit, but they mistakenly went to a nursing home. I think that was down the block. They received a lot of calls from that nursing home and just assumed that it was the same spot. And that person, the husband, I'm not sure if he died or he suffered more significant injury as a result. The city, of course, gets sued. That's why we're talking about a court decision. And in that case, the city moved for summary judgment, saying, well, we were just performing a government function here. We made a mistake, but the public duty doctrine shields us from liability. Well, in that case, last year we got an appellate court decision that was concerning, and now the Washington Supreme Court affirmed that decision, which said that the public duty doctrine only comes into play when you have a legal obligation as a public agency to perform the services for which you are being sued. And the cities, they don't have to provide EMS services. They could choose not to provide EMS services for its citizens, rely on fire districts or private ambulance companies. And so the city of Seattle did not get any protection from liability under the public duty doctrine in that case. Now, we're not exactly sure where the courts are going to wind up for fire districts. It's a little bit different statutory obligations, talking about entirely different laws when you're talking about cities versus fire districts. A recent attorney opinion from the Attorney General's office has suggested that fire districts do have an obligation to provide EMS services to their citizens. That one was looking at tribal issues where tribal property is not subject to taxes, but the Attorney General says even if you don't get paid, if that tribal land is within your jurisdiction, you have an obligation to provide EMS services in that area. So it was really not talking about the public duty doctrine. It was a different issue, but it did suggest that there is maybe an obligation for fire districts to provide EMS services, which would be great for the public duty purposes, because it would suggest there might be protections for fire districts. But I've got to be honest that we've seen the trend over the years in the courts of narrowing and narrowing this public duty doctrine. And the advice we've given to a lot of our clients is be cautious, recognize that the public duty doctrine might not protect the agency from liability if it is negligent in providing EMS services. Probably still would protect you from fires, from negligence in performing fire services, because there is a real strong statutory obligation for you to perform those services. But it's just kind of one of the evolving areas of the law, which makes it more risky to run a fire district. And again, something that we're kind of watching and monitoring to see how both insurance companies respond to this decision. You know, maybe that they increase their rates or suggest different strategies for dealing with these risks, and how public agencies decide how to respond, right? There'll be more emphasis on avoiding negligent actions, I think, as a result of this case, which could be a good result. But overall, I think it'll increase the cost of EMS services. So that's my legal report. Happy to take any questions.
I'm forwarding you the document right now.
Okay.
The public records.
So I don't think that there are any questions, Mr. Pratt. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
So setting a future meeting agenda. What do we have so far?
So the next meeting will be Tuesday, March 7th. And in addition to the standard items, we'll have a discussion of the calculation used in the budget reconciliation, an update on policy 6200,
Hopefully.
a discussion of rehiring unvaccinated personnel, the EMS hospital pilot program. And that's all I have.
Is there anything else we missed? No? Okay, then I'm gonna say meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks.